Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer for this YouTube channel, Nonconformist Conscience. Today is January 20th, but I wanted to make a video for an astrological conversation that is going to be happening tomorrow, January 21st. Um, this astrological conversation is happening between Mercury and Chiron. They are going to be squaring each other. And so I wanted to show you guys the event chart for this transit because it's rich with information. There's so much going on in the world. Chiron is ruled by Mars retrograde in the sign of Cancer, and so a lot of things are coming up. And this is really a good transit to utilize for your own healing. This can be felt tomorrow, or you could have felt it leading up to this square. But it's also, you need to think of this as a trigger for something over the next upcoming days and 2 weeks, I would say. Um, and I just love kind of getting into these. So that way, if you're someone who utilizes astrology to grow, to evolve, to heal, for understanding all of that, this is a really good one to look at for this dynamic. So that way you can see if it is aspecting anything in your chart or if it's bringing up content for you to work with. Before I get into this, I wanted to announce that today the birthday special switched over to Aquariuses. So happy birthday to those who are have their birthday under the sun sign of Aquarius. If you want to know more about my birthday special, you can go to my website under the booking tab and you can read about my offering for the birthday special. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about Chiron and Mercury before I show you this chart. And then I'll just kind of break down the astrology that's going on during this transit. So Chiron is considered the wounded healer. He's a centaur. And really Chiron, if you're looking at it in your natal chart, is where we can have wounding that we're carrying with us that we need to change our awareness around so that medicine can occur. Chiron, it doesn't speak to that wound is going to necessarily go away, but if we change our awareness around it, we're able to live with it in a constructive way that can actually be a catalyst for our own evolutionary emotional growth. It's also in your own natal chart. Chiron doesn't just speak to where you could be emotionally wounded or experience a wounding. It can also speak to where you could be wounding others. As an example, I have Chiron in my second house and in Cancer, and it is opposing a lot of my Capricorn stuff in the eighth house. And for me, a lot of my wounding that I've had to work on is around second house, Chiron in the second house, self-esteem dynamics, and really Chiron in Cancer for me is getting to the bottom of and changing my awareness around the emotional dynamics that are speaking to self-esteem issues. So that's just like a little blip of how it can work. And of course, you want to look at the ruler of your Chiron to give it more information. For me, my Chiron is ruled by a moon in Libra in the sixth house. And so a lot of the wounding that has perpetuated is by me submitting or abandoning myself instead of understanding who I am, right? And so the emotional security that lies within that dynamic and me really having to change my awareness around it. So wherever your Chiron falls in your chart, you can take it by house and then sign and then look at the facilitator of it to give you more context. And again, if you want to branch out, you can look at the aspects that it's playing. But in transits, Chiron is speaking to the ongoing evolutionary journey of how we're meant to change our awareness around either collective wounds or even our own Chironian wounds, especially if Chiron right now through transit is aspecting something in your own natal chart. And this is really interesting because this transit uh, that I'm speaking to that's happening tomorrow on the 21st is Mercury is squaring Chiron. So it's really pulling in this dynamic of what are the messages or the our own thinking being a catalyst to continue to perpetuate our own wounding, or also where we need to change the way that we talk to ourselves or um, classify things um, in order to promote a different type of awareness around the Chironian wound. Chiron is in Aries, and so it's being ruled by Mars retrograde in Cancer, which is really these deep emotional dynamics of where we have lacked maybe autonomy or the will to make choices for ourselves, or um, not really understanding um, how to stay in our autonomy, especially if we're dealing with other relationships, maybe where we're needing to Mars and Cancer retrograde throw off types of emotional security that really aren't conducive for our own healing. And with Mercury and the sign of Capricorn squaring this, and it's in what we call a last quarter square, is where we're really needing to throw off our own limited thinking that might be perpetuating, re-experiencing this dynamic of wounding. And so it's wanting us to also look at where we might need to um, create action around dissolving old thinking, seeing as Saturn and Pisces is ruling that Mercury. This is dealing with, like, Capricorn, Mercury and Capricorn. This can be dealing with authority, or taking in judgment or feeling judged or self-judgment, and the need to really heal this in order to change our awareness. It's also around restructuring, the need to restructure our thinking, so that it doesn't perpetuate reliving these experiences. And so really that's asking for us to get more deeply into the emotional body. And so whatever is coming up for each one of us right now that's being triggered, Aries, Mars, and Cancer, it's really meant for us to cultivate new emotional patterns, and that's seen with Mars and Cancer retrograde. This can also, because of the type of square that Mercury and Chiron are in, can be where we're having a crisis in consciousness or a crisis in our own beliefs of, oh my gosh, like what belief is perpetuating a dynamic of where I'm experiencing a wound. So I'm gonna share this chart with you, and then I'm gonna really break it down, and I'm gonna, hopefully express how to constructively work with this. And I'm also going to speak to what we're seeing collectively, and also what you can do personally, or things that could be triggered right now dealing with this dynamic. So let me share this chart with you all. Here's Chiron, and at the time of this, it's happening in the second house. It's ruled by this Mars retrograde in Cancer in the sixth. This Mars is square to the moon in Libra, and the actual square to Chiron is happening with Mercury at 19 degrees and 14 minutes to this Chiron. And that Mercury is ruled by this Saturn in Pisces, also falling in the second house. This is also sextile to each other. Um, a couple of other things to look at are this moon is in what we call a yod with Neptune and with Uranus. And Uranus is ruled by Venus, and so is the moon. And Venus's higher octave is Neptune, which is really interesting to think about, especially because Neptune is the ruler of this north node. Mercury is the ruler of the south node now. So a lot of things coming up that I want to speak to in regard to this. And I am going to stop the share. I just want you guys to have this chart to see what I'm talking about, and then I'll speak to this. So, Chiron in the second house in Aries of this chart is really, it can be really speaking to um, this dynamic of needing to understand how old wounds are affecting our sense of self, our inner relationship to self. It's the second house. So a lot of self-esteem issues or dynamics around emotional reliance or self-reliance, what it takes for you to survive can be coming up right now. This can be, especially with the moon in Libra, where we're having to look at where dependencies have been created in the past that have really affected our self-esteem. This can also be where we're looking at the extremes of how beliefs, moon in the ninth house, are perpetuating um, our own wounding around inner self-reliance and self-esteem. And with Mars being the ruler of this Chiron and in the sixth house and in Cancer, ruled by that moon, this is really where in its retrograde, it's really where we are needing to improve upon our emotional patterns and to really purge old emotional patterns that are perpetuating um, a feeling of victimization or a feeling of what I like to call feeling stuck. Um, this can also be with Chiron in the second house in Aries. Um, what is going on? What is your self-talk? When you listen to yourself, how are you treating yourself? Are you repeating the messages that others have projected onto you, maybe from childhood, or maybe something has gone on lately and it triggered an old wound within around your self-esteem. So it's wanting you to understand what is the emotional content coming up and what are you what are you saying to yourself right now? And with Mercury and Capricorn in the 12th house square to this Chiron, it's really asking for this need to throw off our limited thinking or our conditioned thinking that has perpetuated self-esteem issues. And then it's interesting because Mercury is the ruler of the South Node, and the South Node is falling in the eighth house of this chart. So there's this need for us to really purge certain dynamics of emotional and psychological habituations, these patterns that keep coming up around where we feel victimized or where there's been an injustice. And it's really about how can I take accountability in order for me to improve? I can't control what other people are doing, Capricorn. I can control what I do, though. And through that, I can learn more about my own emotional dynamics and the ways in which I am utilizing messages of the past that I'm actually needing to culminate because it's perpetuating this cycle of unhealthy self-esteem. Mercury's in the 12th house, so it's really asking for us to dissolve a boundary around tapping into the pure emotion. So a lot could come up around this week and over the next 2 weeks around where maybe we had suppressed an emotional dynamic and all of a sudden it's being triggered as a catalyst in order for us to go back into a wound in order to change our awareness. And changing that awareness comes through the ways in which we are taking in information around that. So it's really asking us to take in more information, to investigate, to learn more about our own emotional patterns, how you talk to yourself, to pay attention to the inner voice. Is is your self-talk healthy? Is it empowering? Or do you get stuck in a cycle of feeling guilt and shame that's perpetuating a self-esteem issue? Yes, you can look at where it's come from, but there's also this need with the moon in Libra to investigate beliefs. Like, what kind of beliefs have you taken in? If you were younger, because this Mercury's in Capricorn, it can be dealing with authority figures in your life, where you're recalling, something out externally has been triggered, and all of a sudden it's taking you back to a place of a wound from whenever you were younger, maybe around some type of authority figure where you have given your authority over, or you are abandoning yourself and you're having self-esteem issues because you're living for other people's expectations of you instead of yourself. And there's really this need with Venus and Pisces ruling that moon to have compassion for yourself whenever you're starting to understand these patterns and where they come from, and then to make a new choice around restructuring your thinking. And that's part of Mercury squaring that Chiron. And Mercury also sextile to Saturn and Venus during this time. It's like if we reflect on the type of thinking that we're having, there can actually be a aha moment that can get triggered where we're realizing that our thinking is really limited, and it's perpetuating crisis or repeating emotional patterns in our life that we're not really wanting to relive anymore. And so it's helping us confront this in order to dissolve, restructure, and heal. And it's also asking for us to take accountability for our own healing and to really look at how can I have more compassion for myself in situations. But, you know, with Mars retrograde, the ruler of this Chiron square to this moon, there's also a need to create action in order to look at this and in order to promote healing. It's where we're having to look at the total truth of what's going on within us on an emotional level in order to change the patterns, the emotional cycles that are being perpetuated, um, no matter what they are. This can be for anyone, but and show up in a multitude of ways, but it's really going to, at the root of it, be around self-esteem, autonomy, and perpetuation of emotional cycles that are needing to be changed. And the root is thinking that is perpetuated by beliefs that are creating an emotional extreme within. And with the moon in a yod with Uranus and with Neptune, this is really speaking to the need to liberate from that. Uranus is in the third house. Again, it's this repeating signature of the thinking. Are you also projecting beliefs around something? Are you assuming something? Are you assuming what someone else is going from? Are you looking at them instead of yourself when you're being triggered? What's occurring? We're seeing this come up right now, like even in the collective, this Chironian wounding, involving these astrological conversations. I got on Facebook earlier and there was someone on there who was, you could see the extremes of beliefs perpetuating wounding that could be occurring for other people. I saw a woman on Facebook who brought up the inauguration, and she was talking about why Michelle Obama wasn't there and saying that she had hatred for her country. That's a projection of a belief. That's not an actual fact. And that perpetuates Libran divisiveness, Libra distorted, instead of Libra naturally expressed, harmony, balance. So this is also on personal levels where we're really needing to look at when we assume things or we project past trauma that's affected our self-esteem, Uranus and Taurus, that is rooted to some type of assumption or thinking things that are for ourself that have happened to us or happening with other people and the beliefs that go with them, where we could be perpetuating wounds for other people by projecting that onto them or projecting what we expect that they are doing instead of actually hearing or listening what's going on for them. And that's part of the moon in Libra too, is this need to really listen to others and where they're coming from instead of perpetuating emotional patterns and cycles that maybe some of us have where we think because something happened to us that this is the way it's going for someone else. Like Taurus can have this dynamic of staying stuck in the well at a subconscious level. This is my experience, therefore it has to be the experience of everyone else. And that moon in Libra in the ninth house is teaching the lesson that no, there's more than one truth, and we actually need to hear where others are coming from to understand their truth and not project what we think their truth is onto them, stemming from a belief or something that's happened to us, because that is how trauma and wounds are perpetuated. This is also where we could really transform our inner relationship to self at this time by looking at our own belief structures and how it's limited our thinking. And with, Venus and Pisces ruling that moon and that Uranus while this square from Mercury is happening to Chiron, and Venus is also conjunct in a new phase to Saturn, which is Mercury's ruler. This is really where we can start to understand that there's more to this, that things could start to be exposed around our own emotional dynamics and how we perpetuate cycles in our life that are stemming from our beliefs, our limited thinking, our past trauma, fear, Chiron and Aries, Mars and Cancer, and where we're really needing to come to an understanding and to change our awareness around this, to really look at the pattern of this and to be confronted with it. And then Mercury is the ruler of that south node. So that way we can improve through purging these long-standing dynamics, however they're manifesting for each one of us. And on a collective level, I really feel like, this is speaking to when we value things that are of an exclusionary or self-interest, rooted in self-interest or exclusion, how it perpetuates wounding for others because they don't feel included, because they're not included, meaning that there is not equality going on. And that we can start to have microaggressions, that we're not even aware of. Like this Mercury is in the 12th house. There's a lot of Piscean energy, meaning that some of this could feel hidden to us, or we could be deceiving ourselves. We could really be thinking that we're altruistic on a collective level or that we're doing something grand. And then we could be, sending the message, Mercury, that's perpetuating wounding because there's some type of microaggression because we haven't really confronted the totality of our beliefs, because we're not seeing that some of our beliefs are rooted in exclusion and self-interest, that some of our values are rooted there. It's really where it reminds me of, so I have kids who are biracial, and I have come into contact with a lot of people who will end up saying things and not realizing that they are microaggressions. My oldest kiddo is in high school and hears this like from other people of color. They're like, you talk white. You don't talk black. Or yeah, I can literally leave it at that. So it's like that's a microaggression. That is sending a message that some part of you is being discounted because it doesn't fit the way that I'm classifying Mercury, my belief. Moon and Libra in the ninth house of this chart, and therefore it's creating divisiveness. It's creating division instead of me actually hearing you and what your experience is. So there's a lot that could be coming up for each one of us where we're really called to hear other people's experiences, to really look at emotional extremes that have perpetuated through our own belief systems, and from those belief systems, how we've classified different things, how we're needing to realize that we might not know the whole truth of something. We could sense it. And so there's a need to maybe take in more information, even about ourselves on an emotional level, to allow it to wash over us as we get triggered. So that way we can start to change our awareness. This is a time to really be to make a conscious choice to look at the ways in which we relate to other people, the ways in which we talk to other people or express ourselves. Is this rooted in some type of inner projection that we're needing to jettison from within? What is that projection coming from? Is there a belief in types of thinking correlated to it? There's a need for us to understand that other people's experiences are not the same as ours. And this can also be on the flip side where other people could be projecting that onto us. And the key is with this Libra moon and this yod with Neptune and Uranus is to understand that that's not about us and to not take it in, to let it roll off of you like water off a duck's back, and to also instate boundaries or to say, hey, that's not my experience. Please don't project that onto me. That way you can change an emotional pattern. If this is something that's coming up for you, it's really everything amounts to what's been learned and conditioned, right? There's still this ongoing dynamic of needing to get into the emotional body to understand and take accountability for our own emotional dynamics, to not repress those emotional dynamics, even if they feel very intense. That's pure emotion. That's signaling something to you. And with Mars and Cancer retrograde, a lot of intense emotions can come up, especially with all the Pisces energy and especially with Mercury in the 12th house of this chart. And what it's doing is it's giving you an opportunity to look at, what is this connected to? Where can the healing happen? Where can I take accountability and responsibility for how I go about improving? So we will see more of some of this coming up. There can be these Chironian wounds that are dealing with the belief structures where people beliefs are a very interesting thing. Pisces, with all of this energy, Pisces can correlate with ultimate truth, and it can also correlate with illusionary beliefs or delusionary beliefs, and not really understanding that we're holding on to one of those. Mars and Cancer can really speak to triggers of where our emotional security patterns are lying, stemming from a belief that we're holding on to that isn't the total truth. And so there is this call to really throw off where our security lies within beliefs that are not rooted in actual truths. And so a lot of this can be exposed for each one of us. And again, this is happening whenever Pluto and the Sun are conjunct. It's speaking to there can be an immense amount of creative self-transformation that happens whenever we are able to look at these issues on an interrelational sense of what's perpetuated and where we've over-identified with beliefs or values or other people's truths and taken them on as our own instead of understanding what is individualistic for each one of us. So again, Mercury in this square to Chiron is in a last quarter square. That is where some people are going to want to hold on because it feels secure, even if it's very painful. It's what's known and familiar. And for others, they're going to start throwing this off wholesale. But it can come through a crisis in consciousness, meaning a crisis in belief. Is this what I actually believe? Or, oh my gosh, I bought into a belief. So for some, there can also be this trigger in a Piscean way of all of a sudden they feel disillusioned. I really believed that. And that's not true. I'm being confronted with the truth and how that belief perpetuated an emotional cycle within. And instead of getting hung up on guilt or shame around this, it's looking at the solution. Okay, now that I know this, what can I do? Now that I'm feeling and sensing that there's more to this than what I thought, Mercury square to Chiron, what can I do in order to cultivate new emotional patterns that perpetuate harmony and feeling regulated within instead of dysregulated and disempowered? How can I be my own authority? How can I take back my authority? That's not true for me. I've taken that in. That's not mine. So lots can come up over this next week. I talked a bit about Althea and the weekly forecast that I did that was posted on the 19th. And Althea has got it going on still in this transit. She is at 29 degrees Scorpio while Mercury is squaring Chiron. She is trining that north node and sextile that south node. So this is where all of a sudden some type of wound, the truth of the wound and how it is perpetuated in our lives can come up and be reflected. The naked truth of it could be revealed. It could confront us so that we can say, this is not who I am and I refuse to be like this anymore. And then that promotes healing through tapping into the emotional body. Yeah, this circumstance, I feel really angry. I feel really sad. Whatever it is that you're feeling on an intense level, that is pure emotion, Pisces, that you're needing to acknowledge in order to totally allow this to confront you in order for self-improvement to start to happen in this area. So I just wanted to speak to this. This is a pretty powerful astrological conversation. Lots is being exposed. What once was hidden, Pisces, is now being exposed collectively, individually, and it's up to us to do what we want with that. Do we want to keep repeating stuff or do we want to say no? And that leads me to the last thing I want to say about Capricorn. Those of you who have been around on my channel for long enough have heard me talk about this. This is not the first time I've talked about this. This is not going to be the last time I talk about this. Capricorn will give us soul tests. And these soul tests are around being Capricornian, self-determined, to not be who we once were, to make a different choice. So there could be an old wound ignited over the next few days and couple of weeks where we get an opportunity to say, am I going to do and handle this in the same emotional pattern that I have in the past? Or am I going to reflect and make a correct judgment around this and be self-determined to not do this again as it's exposed? So again, lots of forgiveness of self, forgiveness of others, drawing a line in the sand, and cultivating new emotional patterns are up for grabs, but it takes one to look at the pattern for it to be purged. And that also means that one has to take accountability for how you have been a part of this. Maybe you made incorrect judgment and all of a sudden a wound is being triggered. Maybe you are not honoring the lessons of the past. And so you're re-experiencing something again. That's okay. If you take accountability and you see, oh my gosh, I'm creating this emotional pattern all over again, you can stop right then and there. You forgive yourself, and then you make a different choice. So Mercury is also giving us, and Mars is helping us to make a different choice around whatever gets ignited. And what that does is that fortifies our inner relationship to self. It strengthens that at the end of the day. So this is a powerful time for us to really be promoting on healing our inner relationship to self right now, and then transforming it through understanding and changing our awareness around the wounds that maybe we keep living out over and over again because we haven't investigated or looked at or peeled back the onion enough around the patterns, the beliefs, and the thinking tethered to that. So I just wanted to say that it's an opportunity to be self-determined as well for your own healing. So I hope that this video was helpful, and I will see you all again later this week, I'm sure. Until then.